guys, it's Lana again, and I'm back. Anyway, hi guys, I'm back here with another video. This is going to be Chapter 2 on Mark Manson's Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Chapter 2 is called Happiness is a Problem, and if you missed the first chapter, you can go back and watch it. It'll be the previous video uploaded. And yes, I'm just going to go right into it. I'm going to be basically going over the notes that I grabbed from this chapter, so you don't have to go and read it. I'm basically saving you guys some time. And I'll go over one of my favorite quotes from the chapter as well, so let's get right into it. Basically, this first chapter, it's kind of revolves around the story of Buddha. In short, Buddha, he started off as a coddled prince. His father, kept him in this palace and made sure that he didn't have to experience any of the sufferings of normal human life. Basically, the prince was actually turned out to be kind of unhappy. So he kind of ran away, saw that people were, suffering so greatly, like malnourishment, blah, 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 there was greater sufferings outside of the palace. And in short, he basically ends up giving all his riches away and becomes Buddha. Basically, what he says, what Buddha kind of figured out, is that suffering is biologically necessary as a part of, human nature and creating happiness. And that happiness is not a solvable equation. Basically, we suffer because suffering is actually useful. That's why it's a necessity in nature and biology. Because suffering creates innovation. We're cold, so we decided to, or, we're cold / we need to cook meat or food in general. So we created fire, or we created clothing, or we created new tools to hunt or gather food, whatever it may be. And again, suffering is both physical and mental. However, it's important to note, Mark talks about, that the body registers both mental and physical pain very similarly. So we could be inflicting, from chapter 1, let's say we're in a negative feedback loop from hell, as he kind of coined it. We could just be causing ourselves to suffer, saying, oh my gosh, I'm not good enough, I'm too fat, I need like a Victoria's Secret body, blah, blah, blah. That suffering is registered very similarly to physical suffering in our bodies. Basically, what it comes down to in the chapter, I think the main message of this chapter is that the camera shut off there for a second. But basically, the main message of the chapter is that we coddle ourselves from emotional pain way too much now. We give all the kids participating medals or trophies. We stop counting goals, but really little bits of pain teach us different lessons, and they help us build up a tolerance, which connects us back to reality, that there is suffering in the world, and that's okay because you can get over it, and happiness will always just kind of be around the corner. Basically, along with that, Mark explains that life is never problem-free. You can just get better problems. That's actually a Warren Buffett quote. For example, he is rich now, wasn't before, but he still has problems. They're just rich problems. And he goes further on and actually says that happiness comes from solving problems. If you have problems you can't solve, you'll be miserable. If you avoid problems, you're also going to be miserable because you can't really avoid problems. And if you do try and do that, when problems occur, they're going to be very hard for you to solve, and then you're going to be miserable again. Thus, happiness is actually an action and constant work in progress. And true happiness is actually finding problems you enjoy having and solving. Because if you can solve a problem, it's a lot more satisfying if you're stuck with a problem that you can't solve. And basically he goes on and says that people mess this whole happiness thing up through denial and playing the victim. Yeah. So the denial is that people deny that the problems exist in the first place. And, this distracts them from reality, and then eventually, that problem is gonna make itself pretty noticeable, and it's gonna hurt you. And then the victim mentality is another way that people mess up, and it's where they choose to believe that they can't do anything to solve the problem. Oh, life, the world hates me, and I can't do anything because bad things only happen to me, and blah blah blah. And that would make you miserable. So that's also a problem. And Mark basically goes on to say that emotions are actually just feedback. Negative emotions are a call to action, because they tell you that there's a problem for you to solve so you can become happier. Let's say, you're getting shortness of breath when you're walking, or your joints are starting to hurt, and you start to feel like you're getting a little too heavy. It's a negative experience, but really your body's telling you that, hey, you know what, I should try and be a little healthier so I can feel better, physically, health-wise, not just on an aesthetic scale, because everyone has different body types. But that negative experience is going to allow you to become a better, healthier person. Mark also talks about this thing called the Hedonic Treadmill, where people, rely too much on their emotions, and just keep trying to do things that make them feel good. This is a problem because emotions are always changing, and so what appeases or creates pleasure will always change, because, depending on your surroundings and whatnot, one day you might want a coffee, one day you might want, to buy something else. A lot of people just try and, go with what feels, what their emotions are saying at the moment, and that just changes and usually ends up creating a sort of materialistic problem. Mark then kind of concludes with saying that instead of people asking what they do want in life, everyone says happiness, so that's kind of uninteresting, he says. We should ask what pain we want or what we are willing to struggle for. Now, everyone wants happiness. Everyone wants to feel good, so, we buy stuff and we do this and do that to try and appease our emotions. But since we now know, or from earlier in this chapter, that suffering is inevitable, we should figure out how to deal with that and, how to give ourselves better problems, better, challenges that we would, be more happy to work to overcome. Yes, pleasure, he ends with, what I have written down is the journey. It's not about getting to some end destination where we have enough shoes to make us feel happy forever. And ending that off, just to round out that point, on page 38, Mark writes, what determines your success isn't the question, what do you want to enjoy? The relevant question is, what pain do you want to sustain? The path to happiness is full of shit heaps and shame. You have to choose something. You can't have a pain-free life. It can't all be roses and unicorns all the time. Pleasure is the easy question, and pretty much all of us have a similar answer. The more interesting question is the pain. What is the pain you want to sustain? It's the question that can change perspective, a life. It's what makes me, and you. It's what defines us and separates us and ultimately brings us together. So that's it. That's all I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.
I don't wanna